Hello and welcome to the podcast from Stress to Success Blueprint. I'm your host, Lolita Gorin. And of course, I'm super excited because today we have an amazing guest, and it's Ashleah Burkeen. She is a multiple business owner. Ha ha ha. Let's see how many businesses can we juggle the way she does. And she is seven-figure earner. How many can say that? And she's also regional partner of Master Networks Missouri chapter. She's a speaker and author. Haha, I got her book. Do you have her book? And she also shares her authentic life, overcoming traumas, mental health struggles, life journey on her own. And, she has a farm and she shows all of that beauty inside of her on her TikTok. And she's a mental wealth advocate. That's why I have her here, because I'm all about that, as you know. And she focus has been on sharing how to break generational curses and redirecting you towards your purposeful life through authenticity and self-love mindset. That's what I'm all about here. So welcome, Ashlyn.
Thanks for having me, Lolita. Nice to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
When I first time when I met you, I mean, like in person, and I saw you speak on the Connect event, and you were talking about childhood traumas, and like I immediately could relate, because my dad was alcoholic, but the way the family worked is like, hey, if somebody will look from outside, it's like, oh yeah, we're doing great. Like, yeah, we're doing all the right things. And although, my dad sometimes would be drunk on the street, the neighbor saw it. But my mom put it all together, not like I was starving, not like I had no clothes, not like I was unkept, like my mom put it all together. And I think when I talk a lot about childhood trauma, and there are some people who say, "Well, no, I had normal childhood." Like somebody need to understand, like just because the facade of the family looks like everything is okay doesn't mean that everything is okay there. And to come up from childhood traumas and those wounds, it doesn't mean that your parents or your environment should be like totally in ruins. You know, we can so quick. This it is just there's so much of that we just portray that everything is fine. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And the first question I want to ask you: when was the time, and what moved you into really opening up yourself to that possibility of like, well, there's more to this, and it's time for me to heal.
Um, I feel like through time there's been multiple moments, but I just wasn't listening. Like, girl, here's your sign. Wake up, right? Life has so much more to offer. But I think the biggest one for me was um having anxiety really, really bad, and so bad that I was always going to the ER because I thought I was having a heart attack and I was dying, and then having a doctor there just say, I've seen you multiple times now. What are we going to fix in your life that's going to get, make this better, make this go away? And I just remember kind of spitting out to him like some of the childhood trauma things that were said to me. Like, for instance, my kids were involved in every sport possible, and my husband worked out of town. And so I was doing it all by myself, really. And I remember saying, like, I don't want my kids to be degenerates. And if they're not in sports, they're gonna, be for the streets and not be good people. And I remember that ER doctor just being like, that is crazy. Like, you're making yourself sick. And so I got physically ill. I had an esophagus similar to somebody that has bulimia because I was throwing up so much because my anxiety was always so bad. And I just needed change because all I could think about was like, I'm not going to be here for my kids if I don't figure out how to start taking care of this and start healing. And so that kind of snowballed into what was next. And then I was given permission by somebody to be okay, and that that everything's different than the story we were told. And so with permission and with just somebody being honest and being like, this is crazy, I think that was the game changer for me where I started to view it differently.
So, I'm very interested to hear the people's stories. We always hear like, hey, and this is where we arrived. It's like, okay, but I'm always interested in the what are the steps we're taking. So I'm very appreciative that you're saying, okay, that was the person that inspired you. Would you mind sharing a little bit more? What is specifically then you did what? Did you read books? Did how did you got the help?
Yeah, so I was already doing personal development kind of with business. It kind of goes with it, right? There's a piece of that. And so that was super, super helpful. But I think like putting myself in rooms where people had gone through what I went through, or starting to see videos on TikTok that where people were sharing their same stories. And I was like, I'm not really different. Like I've been through that same thing. And I think just being vulnerable and st sharing that, starting to share that, and then being received so well, and well in a sense of like people could relate to that, and they were like, oh my gosh, this makes me feel so much better. So when I realized me being vulnerable and starting to talk about it out loud was not only healing for me, but it was helping other people. I'm all for helping other people, like reformed people pleaser, right? So I'm all for helping other people. And so when I was like, oh, my healing journey can heal me but also heal them, I think it was a game changer. So really sharing my story, reading the books, listening to all the things, and really starting a relationship with God was probably the biggest one, and realizing that there's a purpose and there's a reason why I overcame all of that nasty and ugly was to help other people. So, yeah.
The one of the things that I read. Of course, I've been investigating in everything to do with stress management. I read a book that was something why stress is good for you, something like this, and the whole book was really compilation of the different cases that says it's all about your mindset. Like if you assign a meaning that is like contributing to a bigger cause, that
Mhm.
immediately changes the way your body even also reacts to whatever happens. So I totally can relate because when I was also reading a business book and it said, oh, the author was like business, like her father was alcoholic, and that was the first time that I was introduced to the adult children alcoholic terminology. And I was like, oh wait, that's me. And so those revelations really can come from from different places. But then like you said, now when I look back, I'm thinking, okay, that's great that those things happen, because now I can help other people to come to that and say, hey, it's not, it's it's very painful, but that made me stronger, and I can use all of those as a tools for me to move forward and help other people. Now, the one thing that I want to also would ask you about that is the loyalty, because it's especially that has to do with family, and the more the family looks so good, it's like I think understanding that there are some other people that can go through the same experiences and we're not alone. Um, but it's like, how can you even reach out if you reaching out, that's mean you acknowledging that there's something wrong in the family, and that is ultimately cutting into the loyalty. And as from self-preservation, like if we're not loyal to our tribe, they will kick us out, and hence we die. So how did you was there a point that you had this conflict with the loyalty to your family, and you were sticking to your parents or going against your parents because of that loyalty? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I wrote a book about just what's so funny is what I wrote in my book is like this much of what really happened. Like I was being nice, right? But it definitely ruffled some feathers. I will say that I was kind of warned by other people that once you start to kind of push against or call these things to the forefront, because I also was raised where there were so many skeletons in the closet, but we just kept shoving them in and shutting the door, right? And so you're never the fan favorite of the family when you're the first person to kind of call these things out. And I wish I could say that like the family just was like, you don't need to be loyal to us, but that's not what happened. You really have to prepare yourself for your family not to be okay with it, but you have to remember too that they're still in the trauma and they can't see what you see. And I'm really big on family should treat you better, not get passes because they're your family, right? And I think oftentimes we're like, oh, well, they're family, so we give them a pass. But where's their loyalty to us if we're just giving them a pass for their behavior, right? And so I've learned that family can be chosen and relatives are DNA. And I'm okay. I mean, luckily I come from a big family, but I'm okay with the other people and the other generations, like my baby cousins, that I'm making a difference in their lives and they're following the generational curse breaking. I'm okay with us setting these people for them, if that makes sense. So I'm loyal to myself and my immediate family and what's best for us. And sometimes breaking those generational curses is the best loyalty you could have for yourself. So,
That's a good answer, and I think it takes a lot of. So you are so courageous because that takes guts to do that. And I have clients who they like, okay, why are you doing this? Like, there's a lot of that has to do with stress and burnout and all this. Is like, why you keep doing this? It's like, well, because out of loyalty. But if somebody grew up in the environment that they don't even believe they're worthy of more, or they never had an opportunity to think for themselves, like safely, they cannot even find that courage. It's like, how can I even do this? It's like they cannot even comprehend that it's okay to feel, or it's okay to have your own needs or have your own goals. Did you have anybody in your family? And that's another thing that I want to say for those who are listening in and they're not really into that or just starting on the journey. That I read that there was research done. It says if, let's say, a child grows up in the dysfunctional environment, like just not being emotionally supported and having emotional abuse, physical abuse, all kinds of abuse, it's very important for the child at least to have one or two adults, like a safe haven. Like if there's, let's say, a teacher that they can go and relax, like don't have this anxiety, or they have like a grandparent that they can go and relax. That helps them a lot to grow up into individual and into adult, that they still can have this emotional regulation. Did you have anyone in your family when you were growing up for that?
I did. Now that you asked me that question, I've never thought of it that way, but I did. My mom has a sister, my one aunt, she has a lot of sisters, but my one aunt, she was like my bonus mom, but without the judgment or discipline, if that makes sense, where I could be open and honest with her. And she had one of the only relationships in marriage that actually, like, most of my aunts are divorced or aren't with people, right? And she was one of the only solid relationships to this day. She's still married years later, 12 grandkids, right? And so I did. I had one aunt that I could really lean on and lean into. But outside of that, up until I wrote my book, my mom I probably could have talked to, but I don't think that I ever really shared the truth with what I was feeling with her. I kind of viewed her as like me and my siblings dealing with my dad, so I never really viewed her as a strength in that way. But now my mom and I lean into each other a lot. But in the beginning, I did. I had one aunt that really would hear me out and listen to me and give me great advice. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, you mentioned that you have brothers and sisters. Are you like in the middle, the oldest, the younger one?
Oldest.
Oh, so you had like extra responsibilities and acting like a parent, always have to be
Yeah.
strong, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're the parent that nobody asked for, but they get. Yeah.
So, when you were at school, did you have anyone there? I'm probably just asking about what the school environment, were they supportive of like someone like you, or they were like really don't care about how the children behave and what their families look like?
So I was a very different person in school because I was bullied a lot for living in a trailer, which again, you guys, I know now that seems like so silly, but when you're a kid, that's just, it is what it is, right? And so I was a different person. I was very quiet, a little bit more shy, not as outgoing. So nobody really picked up on that at school, unfortunately, which they didn't. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? Everything was normal. And I was like you, I was well put together and I had food and I wasn't starving. I had lunch money and all the things. And so outwardly I it looked fine. Yeah.
So when you met your husband, and was he in like, even now, obviously the family doesn't, it's still his family is the same probably when you met him, or what now? I mean, I don't want to start a sentence like that. That was kind of funny. But like, is your husband comes from very similar family dynamics or from different?
Not the same but similar, if that makes sense. Like not the same issues, but definitely he came into our relationship with some trauma of his own from his upbringing for sure. Yeah.
Did you talk about trauma, and do you have like those conversations that you can support each other and heal each other, or you were like, this is not the topic you really talk about?
Oh, no, I mean like so it was hard in the beginning because normally you want to heal and then find the person that's healed too, but we fell in love and then had to heal individually and then together. And so we don't he doesn't talk about it as much as I do because he's a man, and he was also raised that like men don't have emotions, which is part of his stuff that he deals with, right? But we do whenever I figure something out or I'm, going through stuff and I share with him, then it opens the dialogue for him to feel safe. And luckily we have each other in that. And so he can be emotional with me, and I told him I won't tell anybody. So yeah, yeah, we lean on each other for that a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's very important to have someone that can at least can relate, because it's very hard to explain yourself to somebody that never been through that. Or you could be somebody who's like laughing, like, "Oh, come on, this is not the big deal," you know. So definitely kudos to you and to him to have that relationship.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, when we are talking about the families, and I know, especially those who come from families that now they know is dysfunctional and toxic, it's better to have those boundaries and separation. And I have clients who write me, and they like on Facebook page or whatever, they like, I have a very toxic father, or I have a very toxic alcoholic mother, and I don't want my kids to be influenced by that. But do you have any separation, or with your parents, or with your husband's parents, or you just kind of all happy family all together?
No. So I went no contact with my dad 3 years ago. Um, was in touch with him at my sister's wedding last October, but I'm big on boundaries. I will always preach boundaries because that was a game changer for me, and it opened up space for people that actually genuinely cared about me to fill. But yeah, it's not easy not talking to my dad. I love him, but there's this thing that comes along with when I went no contact with him. There's so much peace and no anxiety and no stress, and I wasn't always worried every holidays on how to impress him to try to earn the love and do the right things. And I worked really, really hard my whole life for his approval and his love and his attention and all the things that he should just gave me as his child. And so it's no, I don't. I went no contact with him, and I've seen him a few times, but in reality, I mourned that relationship with my dad 3 years ago when I decided to cut ties after 34 years of the back and forth. So yeah, it's not easy. It's hard. And I think that what I want to say to people that do set boundaries, and boundaries aren't all definite, right? Like some of them are just until the behavior changes, right? But what I will say to people is, you start to protect yourself, and it doesn't mean that you don't love that person that you cut off and cut out of your life. I love my dad. I pray for my dad every day, right? He means a lot to me. However, I just know that he hurts and harms me, and he ruins the way that I feel about myself, and I have no self-worth when I'm around him. And I can love him from over here. I don't need to be over there where I'm unloved, if that makes sense. So, I just a lot of people think that when you set a boundary, it means you don't love that person or you hate them or you're upset and angry. And I'm not upset or angry. I forgive. I just know he can't be in my life and have access. So,
That that so makes sense to me. And to be honest, like this year, beginning of the year, I just uh, went no contact with my parents too. And I'm only one child, so it's the responsibility of like, well, no, you have to help them, and I'm only one child, so always taking care of everything. Like setting doctor's appointments, and I mean everything that I can do for them, obviously. And I remember my friends, when I told them like, okay, well, I'm going no contact with my parents, and like also I felt this relief of like, oh my gosh, like left the jail, like, wow, I can breathe, I can think whatever I want. I don't have to, approval or listen to, oh my God, I just saw a video you posted on Facebook how your hair looked bad or something like this. Now I'm like, I don't have to listen to this. And I remember a few of my friends said, oh, but you know what, they're your parents, so you still need to go and see them. And that loyalty, I was like, no, this is why we're still doing this, out of that fear.
yeah. What's a scary thing too? But again, we're right. That's the story we're told is like honor their mother or father. Those are your parents. You have to. But childhood trauma to me comes from a place of somebody that's supposed to love and care about you to your face, let you know that they don't love and care about you, right? And the effects of what that does to you. And it's unfortunate, but I always say, and I'm a little harsh when it comes to this because I will never be the positivity queen and sugarcoat things, but If you didn't want me to talk about what happened to me or you wanted me to treat you better, you should have treated me better from the beginning. And sorry, not sorry about it. Do you know what I mean? I have to protect myself and I'm at such peace. And like I said, and you know, you love your parents, you forgive your parent. Well, I don't know if you do, but right? If not, you will get to that place one day. And just from over here, just as a neighbor, that's all. So,
I say, for someone who called themselves a parent, they need to parent.
yeah.
And parent, that doesn't mean that, oh, you need to punish the kids. You need to have them to follow the rules or else. It doesn't mean that you have to put them in line and make sure that they not embarrass you. Like
Mhm.
I gave you food and there was something I read that says, um, you being fed and you being provided a bed with you sleep in the orphanage as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just
That's
because you
deep.
gave a bed and the food, it doesn't mean that you automatically become a parent. Being a parent, being responsible, but also being supportive, giving that validation, allowing that child to actually grow into the adult and not just telling them this is who you're going to be. But my whole healing process started when when my dad being alcoholic, when I realized all this, is that my parents also never been parenting themselves. That goes from generation to
Yeah.
generation. So I'm dealing with toddlers, really,
Yeah.
not adults. So when I took it off that from, I took them off from this oh they gods and like from this pedestal and put them into they just another human. They have no clue about self development or healing. Now I'm looking at them like toddlers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you do. You come from like I have a lot of empathy for my dad, right? And I know plus he said, well, I was raised the same way, and I'm fine or I'm not mad about it, but it doesn't make it right. Right. And I understand I show him I've in the beginning I showed him a lot of grace because I knew that it was generational. But at some point I think like you have to wake up like I want to be better for my kids. And my dad knows what that feels like to be treated that way. So why would he treat somebody else, his own children that way, right? Because that was normal. Yeah. So you're right. You have to parent and I don't know, you shouldn't want to inflict pain on your own babies, in my opinion. So if you felt that way or not, but yeah,
Yeah, I think for me also what helped with understanding is I cannot have I cannot demand somebody to have a heart who somebody who doesn't have a heart. That's like outside of the capacity. They're not capable of doing that. So how can I demand something, like squeezing blood out of stone? It's like you're really not gonna get it. And I need to honor the choice. Like this is your choice to choose who you are. I'm honoring that, but it doesn't mean that I have to put up with that just because you are my parent, because it's still abuse.
yeah, it's still a beauty. Well, and that's just it too, is I'm similar to you. Is like I thought I could love him and accomplish and succeed and do everything enough to get the validation I needed from him. And so I did that, right? I bought my childhood dream home that he promised us and never delivered. I have the pond with the island that my mom wanted that he never delivered on, right? And I have more acreage, and so I have all these things. Well, then guess what happened? He got mad that I outdid him. And then that was a new slew of issues and feelings and of me not being good enough. And then so right, like I've accomplished everything. Any normal parent would be proud, but he used it as a weapon against me. So yeah, your loyalty is to yourself and your children and your immediate family if you're not being treated right. Just period, right?
Yeah, I think abuse is abuse, no matter, and abuse can be physical and sexual, but also emotional. And that abuse that can be very silent as of not really even meeting your needs. Somebody could be, there's a lot of those, especially fathers who, they just there in the house, but they like never present as being like a present and talking with the kids. And when I grew up, I know my neighbors, there were two girls, and that father didn't care about them like at all. Like if they like in the hallway, and he just like will move them with his hand and continue walking when he's supposed to be. So that's like you can say, well, they were not really abused, but they were not really loved or parented or supported or anywhere either. So those who are listening in now on the podcast and they're thinking like, oh, this is something I don't need to listen to because nobody abused me. It's like, but were your needs were there? Was somebody in your life were actually there to celebrate for who you are and then validated you? So there's a lot of things to ponder.
Well, and I think too, I think as parents, like parents forget oftentimes, like we don't ask to be brought here. You guys made that decision for us, right? And so you have to do your due diligence to make sure that we turn out okay. And by the way, you're creating the next, right, leaders potentially of the country, of the world, whatever. And so if you mess us up, you play a part into that. I'm just I'm just saying, like, we didn't ask to be here, and so you better protect us, and that includes emotionally and mentally, because you're right. I think looking back now, I think, a lot of people, my dad was very disciplinary, but none of my trauma has to do with the discipline. All the trauma has to do with the psychological mess that he left behind. So you're right. It's not just physical or sexual. A lot of times the emotional, mental is just as harsh as the others. So,
So if
yeah.
somebody's listening right now and they're like, oh wow, I think I had the same childhood, what would be like the first step that you will recommend them to get like towards to?
Oh gosh, where do we start here? I think you need to like really take an inventory of the people that surround you in your life. Not because we're looking for validation at this point, if we're just getting started. At this, in the beginning, we're really looking at who do I need to put barriers up and keep away from me that's kind of eating away at my self-worth and my self-esteem, right? Who's not adding value to the way I feel and think about myself, right? That's a lot to do with what you're inside. But if you surround yourself with people, right, that are taking advantage of you, or they're using your heart, or they're not emotionally taking care of you like you are them, or you feel, right, whatever that give and pull looks like, you'll never, in my opinion, you will never overcome and be able to fully fall in love with yourself and who you are for genuinely who you are, because you're always going to be trying to validate somebody else's feelings about who you are. So I think the first thing is just take inventory of the people that aren't good for you. And aren't good for you means they make you feel like crap. That's not good for you. Not occasionally like a riff with your best friend, right? I'm talking about they make you feel bad about yourself. And I would start there, and I would start having those conversations, which are difficult, as you know. When you set boundaries and start to remove yourself, it's difficult to have that conversation and tell somebody you're hurting me and I need to love myself right now. And I will say, to go with that, their reaction to you saying that to them, depending on how they react, tells you everything you need to know about the decision that you're making, right? So,
I love that. Um, and also, I think there's so many values or goals or anything that we think, oh, we're supposed to align with this. So let's say somebody, you just said, let's say you have some toxic people around you, and it's like, oh yeah, that's like you're normal because you grow up with that kind of toxicity, so you think it's normal. Also, it says, oh, all of this needs to be aligning to your values. It's like, but are those really my values? Are those people around me, are they really there for me? And like, give yourself permission to even think differently and just kind of come with the like a clean slate and think, okay, what are important for me in the relationship? What does my best friend, imaginary best friend, would look like? How I would want to show up in relationships, what I have to give, and what the reciprocation I want to have. It's very important to separate themselves from that toxicity, because that the stressful and anxious environment, and tiptoeing on, like around people, we carry this from our childhood into our adult life. And
yeah.
so many of friends and co-workers and the people we hang out with, because it's the same toxicity, is this is what our normal is.
Yeah.
So it takes courage, but we really need to look at that, like make a list and right next to the name, write how they make me feel. Or, and if you don't know, just next time you see them, kind of make a mental state, like a note, and like, okay, and write it down where they stand.
Yeah, well, and so to your point, being self-aware, right? That's going to play a huge part into it, especially when you're setting boundaries, right? So you need to spend time alone and also make a list of what you like and what you dislike. Not what everybody else likes or dislikes, right? What you like and dislike. So it could be as simple as figuring out 4 words that are your core values. What is important to you just in general in life, right? And this is for anybody that you set boundaries with, or anybody to come into your life that's new. Do they align with these core values that I've set for myself? If they don't align, then they don't get accepted in, right? Or if they don't align, then I need to have the conversation. So I think you're right. People need to have some self-awareness of, why don't these people make me feel good about myself? Why don't I agree with what they're doing, right? And so I think self-awareness is definitely huge, plays a huge part in it as well. You have to figure out what you like and don't like, otherwise you don't know what boundaries you need to set.
So when you came to that realization that you have some people around you that are toxic and really don't align with you, um, how did you clean this up? Did you realize that there were some people and friends around you, and how you made the transition?
So in the beginning, you have to have hard conversations. Typically, I would just have had enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and some of them, to be honest, were like explosive fallouts, right? Where like I was just triggered for the last time, and I'm not biting my tongue, and this is what it is. I mean, that's just being honest, right? And then I got better with the communication of expressing how I feel and dealing with their reactions back to how I feel. And now, depending on where you are in the stage of my life and when I met you. Like if you're a newer friend, like a year or two in, and you are just not, you know what I mean? The mask falls off and I see for who you are, I will approach it, let you know how you made me feel. And if your response isn't like a friend would be, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That wasn't my intention. If it's anything other than that, I just wash my hands and walk away, and you just don't get any more of my energy because that energy is for me and for the people that genuinely love me and that I can make an impact on. So you do get there, but in the beginning it wasn't that easy. In the beginning it was a little harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, because we already groomed to be people pleasers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and when I'm thinking for those who are listening in and thinking, well, wait, I'm going to get rid of all like 80% of the people I'm hanging out with. What I'm gonna do then? So the fear of abandonment can kick in huge. But we need to realize that there are a lot of people in the world, a lot of and if somebody even who says, well, I live in a small town, I mean, I have only like three people on my street, we are living in 21st century now, and we have plenty of internet, and COVID did one thing good, at least made people to learn that technology can be a friend.
Yeah.
Somebody can have, a conversation like we're having right now on another side of the world or in another state and belong to groups. And I think not to be too shy and really start reaching out to other people and knowing that somebody else there's somewhere that probably needs you too. So
Yeah.
just to be open, and as long as we really want to open up and make that intention to see it, and we can make that list. We can have, five friends that 80% of them are toxic, and then clear those out, will allow the other, the place for new people to come in, and we can even have 15 people coming in our lives that really contributing, and we're feeling alive. Just have enough courage to actually go for it.
Yeah. And guys, I will say, like, I'm a product of the products. So I mean, it was lonely. They say like your healing journey can be lonely, and it is lonely because you do feel like, oh my gosh, I'm wiping out everybody that I know, right? Who will be left? I will have nobody. And you do go through that. Like you will feel those feelings. However, I will say, I started this journey 3 years ago with my dad. It's snowballed into boundaries everywhere. And I will say, here I am 3 years later. Next year will be 3.5. And I will say, I have more high quality people that genuinely love me and are good humans and good hearted and want all the great things for me and vice versa, right? I'm not just giving and they're taking. It is a give in more than one way. And I can honestly say it was worth going through all that in that short period of loneliness because 3 years later, I am surrounded by some of the best people I know. And I'm also from a small town. So you will be okay, I promise.
So no excuses.
Yeah, yeah. It's scary and I get that. It is scary and it's lonely and it can be sad, but that's why some people never even try to heal. But I will tell you, all the scariness and the pain that you feel and that you revisit and all those wounds you have to reopen up, I promise you the payoff is so much greater than the downfall of trying to work it out and trying to start that healing journey. So,
So there are a few times you already mentioned the word boundaries, and I know you talk about that in your book. Can you just kind of tell me, if somebody wants to stop being people pleaser and they need to learn how to say no and all kinds of things, how they can start implementing the boundaries and what the boundaries are?
well, I think that like we were also you've mentioned and we've talked a lot about like what we were told and how we were groomed to believe. And a lot of times we were taught that like we needed a reason why or an excuse to not want to do something or not when we have a bad feeling, you know? And like no is a full sentence. No, period, right? And so you can say no to things you don't like, and you can turn away from behaviors that are not okay. But I think when you start to set the boundaries, you are going to have conversations of like, these are what my expectations and these are my standards for my life now. But moving forward, any new person that comes in your life, you're not sharing, hey Bob, these are my boundaries, right? You're not doing that. You're not giving them a list of friendship reasons, right? You are going to behave and act as if, right? So if, for instance, just an easy example, if somebody called me at 10 o'clock every single night, right? I used to answer the phone because I'd be like, oh, well, what if they need something and I don't answer and then it's my fault and like all this spiral would happen, right? But in reality, that's a them. I don't have to answer my phone at 10 p.m., right? So instead of saying that to somebody in the beginning, you just don't answer the phone at 10 p.m., right? Or you don't answer the phone at 4 o'clock in the morning when they call you, or right? You don't have to be accessible to everybody. You are a prize and they have to earn that right to kind of be in that with you. And you are just going to behave the way that you want people to treat you and set
You
that
know,
tone.
when I started with boundaries, I was a very big people pleaser and fear of abandonment, all that. And I remember when I started implementing them and just saying like, No, I'm so sorry, I cannot do this right now. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, now the bomb was just gonna go off. But guess what? Nobody died. And
Right.
I was like the first step. I start cutting the people that were always coming to me for help, like, hey, can you do this for me, can you do this for me? And they were really not showing up for me when I needed. So and then I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. And of course they found somebody else that can please them, and
Right.
nobody died. So more. And what I like about this, when we implement new habits and we start on this journey, there are a few things happen that we see that the outcome that we're expecting, that's going to be very bad, which is just basic catastrophizing, right? It's not like that bad. And also we build trust with ourselves, because like, oh, I did this, and hey, I'm happier now. So we can step further and further into that journey. But I also know that it's very important to have, we talk a lot about, whatever we say, setting boundaries, like, oh yeah, I need to tell other people what they need to do, and I'm not going to work with that.
Yeah.
But there's another side of the coin, is we need to also have boundaries with ourselves. So
100%.
how about your boundaries with yourself?
So when I think of boundaries, I think about them just in general with myself. Like I set a boundary with my dad, but that wasn't really for him. That was for me because I know that my weakness is letting him, like I know I'm easily manipulated by him. I just know that that's my dad. I was trained to believe that's my parent. You have to respect them, right? And so I fall for it every single time, right? Boundaries this whole time for me have never been for the other person, they are for me. I'm not setting the boundary with the bad friendship for the bad friend. Their behavior is going to continue until they take ownership of who they are. I can't change that for them. But the boundary I set with people, you're right, is for me. It's to protect myself because I know that I have weaknesses and I'm human and I will easily fall into that again because by nature, that's who I am. I've only been doing this for 3 years. The first 34 years of my life, I spent people pleasing and doing it everybody else's way. So I have to set boundaries, not because of people's bad behavior, but because I fall into their bad behavior and make it acceptable. And it's just not acceptable, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, totally makes sense. And also, it's there was a new concept for me when I started working about boundaries and things, that I have to set boundaries with myself about my relationship with myself.
oh, yeah.
It's like, I am not gonna treat myself that way anymore. So it would be this funny thing that, let's say, I'm doing something, and uh, I make some decision and it makes me angry. And then I will be angry. And then I tell to myself, oh, wait, 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 I'm not supposed to feel angry. This is bad. And then I'm getting angry at myself that I am angry. And then I heard this as like, well, you talk to yourself like your parent used to talk to you. And I
Mm,
was like, oh, wait a minute. That's right. That's like my mom and my dad in my mind of talking like this. So one of the boundaries was with myself. I said, I am not gonna talk to myself like this anymore.
that's good. Well, I mean, self-talk is like how you respond. And, we think. our brain is super smart, but also super dumb at the same time, right? So it can receive all that. For instance, you stub your toe and you're like, gosh, you're so stupid. Like, that's the third time you stubbed your toe today, right? I just told myself I was stupid. That was the first time today I said it, right? How many more times am I going to nonchalantly speak to myself like that? And my not realizing that my brain is receiving that information and I'm believing it, right? But this is how dumb your brain also is that you can easily not talk to yourself that way or set boundaries, right? And when that happens, course correct yourself like you do. And then your brain is like, oh, we're not stupid. We are brilliant, right? And so I love that you set boundaries like with yourself personally for the way you treat yourself. And I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, you do. You really do have to watch because you're so used to everybody else around you telling you that and making you feel that way that it's just a normal self-talk. And self-talk is so important when you're going through this. And I think a big piece that plays into that is celebrating yourself and being okay with the fact that you're allowed to do that. Like you're allowed to think you're awesome. You're allowed to think that you're pretty. You're allowed to think that you're exceptional, right? And I think a lot of people don't think that that's okay.
And I
So,
think having compassion also towards yourself, even if we start that inner conversation with like negative, and say, "Oh, you're so stupid. Hey, stop talking to me like that." We have like, "Hey, it's okay. I just tell myself I'm stupid, and I got angry at myself." And you know what? That's funny, but that's okay. I love you. That's like the inner parent was just like, "I'm going to accept you no matter what. I will love you unconditionally." So we need to love ourselves unconditionally and actually learning in the process. What does that mean? Because we never learned that. So like to go to that discovery is like a journey. So
yeah, that's very, very true. Well, I think too, like just something as simple as when you're a kid, how your parents reacted when you spilt the milk, right? Something that was an accident, how your parents reacted to that definitely plays a part with the way that you even I think when we say stuff like, oh my gosh, you're so stupid, or we get angry with ourselves, I think a lot of that comes from small situations over time that built up. Their reaction to us spilling milk was the end of the world, maybe. And in reality, it's just spilt milk. We can clean it up. Everything is figure outable, right? Why are we having such an intense emotion around this? And I think oftentimes, sometimes that's where I mean, you're right. We get that self-talk from experiences that we had when we were younger. How silly is that? Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't cry over spilt milk. Yeah.
well, obviously we can talk about that forever, but
Uh,
we're not going to. But before we finish, I want to ask what are all those amazing businesses that you do and how you can help those who are listening in now and saying, you know what, I love Ashley now. What does she do? And I need her help.
So, although we own a lot of investment property type portfolios, so those are the multiple ones. We own a general contracting company, which is our main business, and then we have different like rentals, fix and flips, and Airbnbs portfolio. Then I have a farm that I make my own medicine and sell my eggs and all that kind of stuff, which I love. And then wrote my book, and so I'm getting right now. I'm building out a kind of a mindset coaching thing. It's not completed yet, 2025. It'll be here. Um, but I think that when it comes to business specifically, if I wouldn't have had the mindset growth and the healing journey, I don't know if we would have ever kind of busted through that next ceiling, the next level in business. And I think having your mindset right and having the money right. So it's more than one thing. It's not just you can make all the money and have a successful business. I think your mindset needs to align. And so I think that if you're out there and you are a business owner or you have aspirations to do things, I promise you that if you clear your mind and can focus on loving yourself and thinking that you're exceptional, that you're capable, once you realize that you're capable, you are unstoppable and you will hit the ground running and have all the successes in any compartment and any area and space of your life. So, yeah, to come in 2025. There'll be more for you guys, but definitely grab my book off of Amazon for a good starter. Yeah,
Yes, for those who don't know, is that pretty? That is so pretty. I love this picture of you.
thank you.
Yep, from unloved to unstoppable. So do you have a website? Because I know all of this gonna be in the description below, of course, all the links how to reach out. But I also like that you will say it for those who are just listening in, where they can find you.
So I don't have a website, but you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. My handles are at authenticallyab. So authentically Ashleah Burkeen. And then Facebook is Ashleah Burkeen, ASHLEAH. And my book is on Amazon, Unloved Unstoppable. So easy to find. But if you find me on Facebook, you can find me everywhere else. So check me out there. Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for being here, taking this time, because I know it takes courage to, through all this so much pain and being vulnerable with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is fun.